You can just throw Paul's writings out of the New Testament if you want. You know, the parts that say women shouldn't speak in church and you shouldn't get married and slaves should obey their masters and all that kind of stuff. Like the most problematic parts are often written by Paul. But if you don't want to do that, there's really two things that can help you understand them and still let go of those problematic pieces. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. So I'm a fully digital pastor. I get this question all the time when I'm trying to help people form beliefs through direct messages in social media and in our really tightly knit Not Church group. And you can find information about all that, where you find the information for all the creators. So the first thing you're going to have to do is get yourself a good study Bible. Now, the academic consensus is that the New Revised Standard Updated Edition is the most accurate translation of the Bible. And there is a study Bible that uses that translation called the SBL Study Bible. The SBL is the Society for Biblical Literature. They're the big organizations of Bible scholars, so it's really great. If you want something that's a little bit more accessible, the CEB Study Bible is really great. But you need that because each of Paul's books are going to have an introduction. And you want a scholarly introduction, and you want an introduction that's going to tell you what's going on in that book, because Paul is actually writing to specific people that have specific places. It appears that Paul never really expected his writings to be scripture, and so he didn't write them with this sort of universal application in mind. And when you read a good introduction to one of Paul's works, it's going to tell you about the culture. It's going to tell you the problems that were existing in that place at that time and what it was that Paul was trying to address in that place. And a lot of times, what Paul is addressing is something that is not applicable to today. And so when you're looking for Paul's instructions to that church, you say, well, that's not a thing that we deal with today. And we have evolved to understand that slavery is just fundamentally wrong and all kinds of stuff like that. But all of it also has this other underlying value of Paul that when you understand that, so many things make a lot more sense. Paul was convinced that Jesus was coming back, not in 1,000 years or even in years, but tomorrow. Paul was sure about that. And what that means, though, is if you think about it, if Jesus is going to come back tomorrow, you're not going to get married today. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It takes a lot of work and planning to get married. And so what Paul is often saying is look, Jesus is coming back tomorrow. Why are you going to waste time on stuff that doesn't matter? Paul is saying that you've got a couple of days left, maybe a week or maybe 1 year. And so what Paul wants people to do is spend all of their time trying to tell people about Jesus and help them hear the story of that. And so even though it's still problematic, even though what he says is horrifying, it can make a little bit more sense. Slaves are not going to resist their masters if tomorrow Jesus is going to come and free them. The stuff about marriage makes sense. The stuff about women not speaking in church, that has nothing to do with that, but it does have to do with what's going on in that church that you will find out when you read the introduction to that book. And why deal with this at all? Well, for a lot of people, the Bible is their sacred text. It is the book that they are using to help them form their spiritual beliefs, help inspire them to be the best version of themselves, and gives them a purpose greater than themselves. And for people who are using the Bible to do that, or for who the Bible has been meaningful in their past, being able to square with the teachings of Paul can be helpful. But there's a lot of really great stuff in the New Testament, and if Paul just doesn't work for you, just read the Jesus story. It's pretty great.